Hello, everyone. I'm Adnan Burke. Welcome to MLB Tonight, an AAPI Heritage Month conversation. In this special edition of MLB Tonight, we're excited to discuss and celebrate the history of Asians and Asian Americans in baseball. In recent years, international signings of high-profile players from Asia have been one of the biggest storylines of the MLB offseason. When a superstar arrives from an Asian market, we often ask how that player will adapt to the game, and more importantly, the culture and atmosphere of American baseball. Well, what about players that go to Asian markets from MLB? Is their experience similar? How do they adapt and find community themselves? To answer those questions, I spoke with a collection of retired MLB players who spent time playing overseas. First off, that is Xavier Scruggs, who spent 2 seasons playing for the NC Dinos, the KBO, in 2017 and 2018. Ryan Roland Smith played in the Chinese Professional Baseball League in 2015, followed by 2 seasons in the AUBL of his native Australia. And finally, Eric Thames, who played 3 seasons in the KBO, winning league MVP in 2015 with the NC Dinos. So no disrespect, X or Ryan, but I got to start with the MVP because he crushed it. Eric, what was that transition like for you? I'm guessing it wasn't very difficult. You won MVP.
No, it was actually very difficult, but it's fun. Hey, the great food, the great team, the great people in that country of Korea. I mean, it helped me out a lot. But it's the same thing in life, you know. It's all about transition and how you adapt.
X, you replaced Thames in the NC Dinos in 2017. What was the transition like for you?
I was very thankful I had someone like Eric that came before me and that kind of passed down a lot of information about how to go about things. I still remember my first conversation with Eric and as well as other guys that had played there, and my translator in Kang Maru Sol, who was a huge help. But their main message to me was, don't try to bring your American ways over to Korea, right? Don't feel like you need to try to influence them. Be open to their ways, be open to their culture, be open to the things that they do. And that made the transition a little bit easier, but I can't sugarcoat. I got there in Korea and I felt like I was in the middle of nowhere. I asked myself, should I be even here right now many times? But ultimately the transition was made a little bit easier for me because I had people come before me to help me understand that their culture and everything that they did was going to be beneficial to me.
And Ryan, a native Australian going to the CPBL, was there a part of that transition that was particularly difficult for you?
Well, I was going to Taiwan, Adnan, and the thing for me, I'd been there a couple times before. I played in the World Baseball Classic, in Taiwan, so I'd gotten a little taste of it. But look, coming from Australia, maybe the transition you think can be a little bit easier. But I'm not going to lie, I was like X, man. I struggled. I was lonely. I rocked up, and I'm like, you constantly ask yourself, why am I here? What am I doing here? And you have to, keep reminding yourself that, you're here for a goal, you're here to go compete. But the one thing I will say, for me, it was a situation, the Ida Rhinos, they had like Manny Ramirez, play there for a bit before me, then Freddie Garcia. They're like, hey, look, you played in the big leagues. We want you to go like 9 innings every time out. I'm like, hold on a minute. And so my pitch counts, man, I was like throwing like 120, 130 pitches to a point where I had to walk in with a translator and be like, hey, listen, like, I don't know if this is sustainable. This is a long season. And they're like, hey, this is the CPBL. You pitch in the big leagues. This should be easy, right? I'm like, no, these guys are good. This is a really high level. I don't know if I can keep pushing myself through some of these pitch counts. So it was a massive adjustment for me.
What about the differences in Major League Baseball and the league in which you played in terms of, rule differences, crowd culture, that kind of stuff?
You're used to playing with guys that speak Spanish. You're not used to playing with guys that speak Korean. So that was difficult for me, is like just trying to pick up little pieces of the language that I can help myself with. And then off the field, kind of just the biggest thing was just, it wasn't so much a rule aspect. I had my first son was born in Korea. So getting used to this idea of what are the culture rules when it comes to your kid being outside at a certain period of time, the safety that comes along with that. More of mine was dealing with stuff off the field in that sense to make my family comfortable as well.
Yeah, X, I believe you told your fiance you're headed to Korea months before the wedding. How'd that go?
Yeah, she about slapped me. She was not. She said that, you think I'm about to go all the way across the world after we just got married? She completely shut it down. But introducing her to the fact that, this is something that we can experience together in our first year of marriage. The idea of sticking with one team and competing for one goal was something that was very, very exciting for us.
How about expectations? We know it's like for Yamamoto and Sasaki coming here. Did you feel those expectations as an American going over there?
Yeah, you're supposed to be the dog. Like, I had to follow up what Thames did, and he was putting up video game numbers. Like, the expectations were unreal for me specifically. And you're not going over there just to be an average player. You're going over there, they expect you to be the best. I still remember the first day I came into my second spring training with the NC Dinos. And the manager came right up to me and he said, MVP this year, MVP. and I started laughing because I'm thinking, okay, he's joking with me first day. And there was no crack of a smile. It was complete seriousness for me to have the expectation to be the MVP of the league. So thank you, Eric. I appreciate you.
Well, Eric, how about your expectations? Because you were able to do MVP. Were they expecting that of you, or did you supersede expectations?
When I first went over to Korea, I kind of let go of my dream of like being a major league player. So it's kind of, okay, I'm here now, so I'm going to be the best player I can be now. And so that second year, I was okay, I know the pitchers, I know the cities, I know everything. So now I can actually focus on like, how can I hit the fork ball better? How can I hit the curve ball better? Four seamers up in the zone. And I would just like work. And, when you have an MVP type year, like, everything just works right. Like the whole year. It's like you're just in this weird phase and you just see ball, hit ball. And that's the zone I was in. And it just didn't stop all year. So, yeah, hard work paid off. That's all I could say.
Yeah, you were the first 40-40 player in KBO history. It's amazing. Again, X, you do a great job on ESPN and with us and MLB Network Radio. Has that impacted your view of these international players when you're broadcasting?
Yeah, it's totally changed my perspective of things. I give so much grace to guys that come over from Asia, including all over, but specifically from Asia because, look, Major League Baseball is the highest form of competition these guys will face, and they've been wanting their whole lives to maybe just smell an opportunity. The adjustment period has been very short for a lot of these guys. If these guys are able to make that adjustment within, games, within months, how special can they ultimately be when it's all said and done?
Coming up next, we'll talk to our player roundtable about their first game overseas, how they were feeling, and what they remember about the energy and atmosphere from fans in the stadium. Welcome back to MLB Tonight, an AAPI Heritage Month conversation. Well, listen, you guys have all faced pressure in different arenas, but Ryan, take me back. The first appearance you made, warm welcome? Were you received well?
The first couple outings I remember, it was like kind of, hey, look, we'll see how this goes. In regards to knowing what I was up against, what the level was like, how they hit. I do know the strike zone seemed to be really tight for me for some reason. I don't know, like what was going on there. Maybe because the expectation was I was going to be pinpoint. On the flip side, if you won the player of the game, and I'm not joking here either. If you won the player of the game, they interview you. They put this headdress on your head, and then you're supposed to do this dance. I'm not joking, but I did have to do it a couple times. But I just did like a modified version. There's no way you're going to find that online anywhere, so forget about it. But yeah, good experience all around, that's for sure.
Axe, how about for you? That initial at-bat, first game, what stood out?
Yeah. I think just what these guys were talking about as far as the music and the chanting and the singing and the dancing. It was a packed house, and it felt like an NCAA basketball 1 versus 2, Duke versus North Carolina, just the excitement of it. I did hit a home run in my first game, so that took away a lot of the nerves, honestly. And I think once I kind of settled in and realized that this was going to be a fun place to play, a lot of those emotions that could be negative were taken out of it. And I just remember enjoying it. But first, I came into that first game about 20 pounds overweight because I had eaten so much Korean barbecue as soon as I first got over to Korea. So after those initial first games, I'm like trying to figure out how to lose some of this weight because I was eating so good over there.
Last question for each of you. Ryan, what was the lasting impact of your experience?
Just some of the relationships you build and from the players over there. And look, the Taiwanese people absolutely live and breathe baseball. That's what they do. And I really understood that. And just some of the relationships, like I said, I was back there in February of this year, years, nearly a decade since removed playing there. And I still had fans coming up and bringing up games. I was like, wow, that's how into baseball they are. I'm like, it's I get it if it was like Manny Ramirez, who was a couple of years prior to me. I totally understand that, but this is wild. And then just bumping into people around the game, for me, that was a special thing. Just some of the relationships leaving Taiwan, my short time there.
You weren't expecting to autograph box scores 10 years later. That's pretty impressive.
No chance.
X, how about for you?
Yeah, it has to be the same. The relationship aspect of things. I'm still really good friends with my translators, both Kong Maru Sol as well as Daniel Minky Cho, who are my translators with the NC Dinos. And also, I mentioned my first son was born there, so we got the opportunity to go back when MLB had their first games in Korea. Just previously last year. So people remember the impact that you left just as much as they impacted you. And that was something that I'll forever take away.
That's well said. Eric, we give the last word to you.
Yeah, I would say, life will always throw curveballs at you and put you in situations that you don't anticipate. But it's how you react and it's how you adapt and go. Like, I never would have thought that I would play in Korea, and I was there and I tried to make the best of it, and it turned out to be one of the most beautiful experiences of my life. Like everybody just mentioned, like the relationships, the fans, seeing another culture, seeing how people live. It's just like moments like that and experiences like that you just cannot replicate. And for that, I'm thankful.
Still to come, our very own Ron Darling sits down with a group of experts discussing the history of Asians and Asian Americans in baseball. Welcome back to MLB Tonight, an AAPI Heritage Month conversation.
To start off our discussion on the history of Asian Americans in baseball, I'd like to welcome Kariyo Nakagawa, author of Through a Diamond, 100 Years of Japanese American Baseball, and the founder of the Nisei Baseball Research Project, an organization dedicated to preserving the history of Japanese American baseball. Next, we have Dan Kwong, a performer and documentary filmmaker who spearheaded the Manzanar Baseball Project, a project which recreated a baseball field made by incarcerated Japanese American citizens during their internment in World War II. And last, we have R.J. Laura, a curator at the Baseball Hall of Fame, working as the head curator for the Yakyu exhibit, whose opening coincides with the election of Ichiro Suzuki to the Hall of Fame in July. All right, we'll start with you, RJ. While baseball is known as the American national pastime, many may not know just how popular the sport is in areas such as Japan, Korea, and Taiwan. Can you tell us how the sport made its way overseas?
One thing we like to focus on at the museum is not necessarily when the game was first introduced, but when it became part of a nation's cultural fabric. When did it really take hold in the countries that baseball is widely played in today? And Japan, we see that around 1872 when Horace Wilson, an educator and baseball fan from Maine, who's credited with being the first to teach the sport to Japanese residents. He taught his students at a Tokyo preparatory school how to play baseball, and they in turn sparked the game's popularity by teaching the sport to others throughout Japan. They left the school and went back to their prefectures and taught their local communities how to play the game, and that really is how baseball in Japan, took hold. And you see other similarities happening in Korea and Taiwan and other Asian countries.
Carrie, could you tell us a bit about the beginning of Asian American and Japanese Americans' involvement in baseball?
Well, Ron, we always go back to the 1899 Excelsior team in Hawaii. Reverend Takimura started this team, and then as early as 1903, the Fuji Athletic Club in San Francisco. My Uncle Johnny went in 1924 and 27, and it was part of a kind of a shared legacy with the Negro Leaguers in 1927 as well. And, they were denied playing Major League Baseball and banned in the United States, but they became our American ambassadors across the Pacific. So we really look at today's legacy players as their ancestral godfathers, and they're standing on the shoulders of these early tours and these early Nikkei tours that not only went to Japan, but they went to Korea and also China.
Tell me a little bit more about Uncle Johnny. I'm really interested in having a family member. I know as an historian you've done all this research, but the personal tie really brings you in.
Oh, thank you, Ron, for mentioning him. Uncle Johnny, my dad's brother, he was considered the Babe Ruth of the Nisei in the early 20s and 30s. He actually was a left-handed pitcher, center fielder, and a home run hitter. And it really was a special situation for me to look up at the wall as a little kid and see my Uncle Johnny standing next to Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth, along with his Nisei teammates, and they actually defeated Babe Ruth All-Stars 13-3. So I really feel that Gehrig and Ruth probably was their first encounter of a Nisei kind, but I think they had tremendous respect for their competitiveness and, you know, their love for the game.
Dan, I know that you have a personal connection to the incarceration of Japanese Americans in 1942. For those who are unaware, could you tell us a bit of the history and how it relates to our national pastime?
When World War II broke out and President Roosevelt signed the executive order to authorize the Army to basically incarcerate all the Japanese Americans living on the west coast of the United States, Manzanar was the first major camp to be completed. It's about 3.5 hours north of LA, and that's where my mother and her entire family were incarcerated during the war. One of the first things people did when they got there, they started playing baseball. You know, again, the love of baseball that started in Japan was brought over by the immigrant generation. They passed it on to their kids. And so baseball had different meanings in the internment camps. It was a way for people to have a little piece of their normal life while they were incarcerated. I think more symbolically, it was a way to express their Americanness. So baseball had many different meanings within that experience for Japanese Americans.
Well, thank you, Dan, for that perspective through one of our darkest times in the history of this nation, certainly. RJ, a little more than 20 years after the incarceration of Japanese Americans, Masanori Murakami became the first Japanese-born player to play in the major leagues. Could you speak to his legacy and how other trailblazers like Hideo Nomo, Chan-Ho Park, and Ichiro Suzuki have led to this increase in Asian and Asian American players in the league today?
As you mentioned, when Mashi Murakami made his debut with the San Francisco Giants in 1964, he became MLB's first Japanese-born player. Now, there was a full 30-year gap between Mashi's final season in MLB and Hideo Nomo's first season in the majors, the second Japanese-born player being Hideo Nomo. And Nomo, with the tornado of success that surrounded his early career in MLB, Nomo completely blew the door for future Japanese players opens to play in the United States. We often talk about in baseball is that representation matters. So from Bobby Balsinia, the first Asian American to break into the major leagues, Mike Lum, first Japanese American, Ryan Kurosaki, the first American player of full Asian ancestry, Chan-Ho Park, the first South Korean-born player, Don Wakamatsu, the first Asian American manager, and it goes on of all these wonderful individuals who have spent their life around the game of baseball. You know, players of Asian ancestry have encouraged Asian and Asian Americans to pursue their own big league dreams. Stephen Kwan is of Chinese and Japanese descent and always considered himself too small to be a professional baseball player until he became entrenched with Ichiro growing up.
You know, it's interesting on a personal level, guys, is that I was born in Hawaii, but my parents moved when I was 5 years old. So I went from a place where everyone looked like me to Massachusetts where no one looked like me. And I know that it was so important when the baseball bug got me that my mom loved Mike Lum because he had Hawaiian ties and he played for the San Francisco Giants. And anytime he was on TV, our house stopped because we all got to watch Mike Lum take his at-bat. Or Len Sakata when he played for the Baltimore Orioles. And when those players came on the screen looking the way I did, I was like, wow, you know, maybe I'm not crazy. Maybe I can buy into this dream. People who look like me do play in the major leagues. So that is really, really important. Final question, Kerry. I'll go to you first. What does this level of representation in the league of both Asian and Asian American players mean to the greater Asian American community?
And whether you have that personal connection as an athlete or just watching them on TV, you finally realize that you exist. There's hope. You can make it. And so we're very hopeful that in today's world, all Asian ball players, Asian families realize that there isn't any restriction anymore. They can go to the top as high as they want to, and practically every MLB roster has a biracial Asian player or a full Asian player. And so we just appreciate the opportunity that now we're able to kind of get this specialized knowledge out, and the All-American game continues to roll on, and we're so proud of it.
Kerry, so well said. Dan, what does it mean to the larger community?
Well, I think it's been said, it matters to see yourself, your people, represented in the culture of your homeland, and not just represented, but positively represented. When you have someone come along like Hideo Nomo or Ichiro Suzuki, and then when you get someone like Shohei Ohtani, it just obliterates that message of inferiority that we've had to deal with for so long. And so I think that's part of what the meaning is of today's success of Asian ball players, Japanese ball players, Asian American ball players in MLB, is that we are part of this world. We are part of this culture. We belong here. We excel here. We are equal.
This has been a special edition of MLB Tonight, an AAPI Heritage Month conversation. Thank you so much for joining us in celebrating our heritage and taking the time to learn more about our history.